welcome to another up close video. Today's one is for Tonic Stamp Club number 13 and it is called Little Monsters, and these are just so adorable, these little characters on here. There's 6 different monsters and they're all like doing different things or have different like expressions on their faces that are just so adorable. Like this one's really grumpy, so you've got a sentiment to go with someone being grumpy, and then you've got this cute little one holding the birthday cake. This is a little like mad scientist one. You've got this funny little fella holding a candle, but on my one I've actually turned that into a paintbrush as well. This one just looks like he's eaten way too much sugar, and this one looks a little bit crazy as if he's playing with the stick of dynamite. So I really enjoyed this month's Stamp Club again. These characters are just so cute and they're really fun to colour in as well, because obviously with monsters they can be absolutely any colour, so you can really go to town with the colour combinations for ones that have like the spots on them or the stripy separate sort of tummy as well. You can really play around with the different colours that you use too, and you also have your coordinating die set as well, which mostly this month is coordinating dies to cut the little characters out, but you do also get a really large background die, which is great for both actually die cutting and using all of the fall away pieces, of which I've got a few of them here. Like you get tons of these little circles that you could create some kind of spotty background on your card, but this is also great for debossing into the card to give a almost like an embossing folder kind of a look, but you're sort of using more of the debossed side rather than the, well, I suppose it is the embossed side. It depends how you're looking at it, because you get embossed circles, but the lines of where the die would have cut are debossed. So that gives a really cool look, which I will show you on a couple of projects. And you can also then turn it into a stencil as well. So it works really great for using your inks or your Nuvo mousses through as well. I was just using a little bit of sponge to apply it thinly to get the spots on my card, but you could also maybe cut 2 of these out of cardstock, stick them together, and then you'd get a much thicker kind of amount of mousse left behind if you use this with a palette knife as well. So it works really nicely for debossing, for stenciling, or for just using as a panel on your cardstock as well, which I think is really lovely. And I didn't actually do this on any card, but you could even come along here and like rip into it to give it a different kind of look again. So you can have like this sort of edge to it. It kind of looks, I mean, you could turn it into something that's maybe a bit underwater themed, and this could be some kind of like modern sort of looking coral or something. Maybe bring in the whales from that previous Stamp Club that had whales and little fish and stuff, and you could do something with this die and turning it into a sort of coral kind of thing, like a stylized sort of coral. So that would be a cool idea as well. Or any other like small little characters or flowers and stuff, you could put them within the little circles on here too. So I think this die is a really nice versatile one, and you have a couple of extra sentiment ones in the die set as well. But let's first look through the stamp set, and if you are interested in getting this month's Stamp Club, the links will be below this video in the little video description and also on my blog as well. And the links will be affiliate links as well, so I really do appreciate you using those links to purchase your set, because I get a small commission at no extra cost to you, and it really makes a big difference. So yeah, really do appreciate that. So let's have a look at the stamp set. So firstly, let's go through all of the adorable little characters. So this one is just so goofy with the 2 little teeth sticking out and the tuft of hair on his head, and he's got funny little skinny arms as well, and then he's holding a candle, but you can also turn that into a paintbrush as well, which I'll show you. Then this little fella is a really like fluffy kind of monster, and well, I suppose it's not really a technique, but I'm going to show you one card where I coloured him in so he kind of looks fluffy by using like little strokes of a slightly darker colour on top of the main base colour. But he's really adorable, and he's looking down at the little cake that he's holding. And then you do also have another cake, which is the same as this, but it's got a second tier on it as well, so you can give any of the other characters a little birthday cake too. This funny little one is to go with the grumpy sentiment. He kind of just looks a little bit miserable, and I combined him with the birthday cake because there's a sentiment that kind of goes with that sort of theme. I love this little funny one that's kind of like a mad scientist with his conical flask that's got a poisonous symbol on it, and there's like chemicals bubbling out the top of it. And you could also make this like a really funny one, because he's got spots on him, this one, but they kind of are like really random spots. So it could be that he's drunken that potion and he's like turning like changing colour, turning into a different colour, or he spilt it on himself and he's got like the little patches on. So you could really do something funny with that. You've got this little fella who really does look like he's just eaten way too much sugar, and looks a little bit hyper, but he's really sweet to kind of sit on top of one of the other one's heads as well, to kind of elongate the design on the card, and he looks a little bit crazy, as if he'd be bouncing up and down on top of someone's head. And then we've got this little fella here who is kind of like waving hello, or I used him with a sentiment that said monstrous hugs or something, because he kind of looks like he's holding his arms out to give you a big hug. I love his little wings on the back of him as well, and I love the fact that he's got 3 eyes too. It's always cute when they have 3 eyes, and you could actually use googly eyes on these as well. This one and this one in particular have perfectly circular eyes that are just a full eye. These two do have eyelids, and these ones have like oval or sort of like a rounded squarish kind of shape eyes. So you could put googly eyes on there, but you'd have to go up a size to kind of cover what was underneath, unless you carefully inked it and didn't ink up the eyes. But either way, you can kind of do that. Then as extra little accessories, you've got a round bottomed flask that can go with the little crazy scientist one. You've got the bubbles coming out of the top of that round bottom flask, so again it looks like another potion or something. You've got a separate little eyeball, which I think is hilarious. You could have you could actually add these eyeballs like on the top of here as well to make him be a 3-eyed alien-y monster as well, which I think would look really sweet. You've got a little heart, and then you've also got a tiny solid heart as well. You've got that birthday cake that I mentioned before. You've got a little flower. I actually combined the flower with this little fella. You've got a stick of dynamite as well, which is quite a nice different kind of accessory to have. I don't think I've ever had a stick of dynamite as a stamp before, but this one kind of looks like he could be holding that, or these could be flying around the mad scientist kind of one as well, or this one definitely looks like he could be playing with some dynamite. And then you also get a tiny little word that says clink as well, so you can have fun with putting that anywhere on your card as well. And then all of the sentiments that we've got a lot of really gorgeous sentiments that can mix and match with each other, which is always great when you can think up so many different sentiments. You've got can't wait to see you, which is kind of funny because they've all got like big googly eyes and stuff. I only have eyes for you, again that goes along with that kind of theme. Monster hugs, monstrous, we'll have a monster of a good time, sending you, so you can do sending you monster hugs or sending you monstrous, and then we've got some more phrases. Thanks for cheering me up, I was so grumpy, which I think goes perfectly with this little guy. Then we also have birthday wishes, favourite, you're my favourite weirdo, and let's get this party started. And then you also have the word hi as well. And I'll show you all of the dies that coordinate with these too. So if I zoom in a little bit, we'll be able to see which ones coordinate. So all of the little characters have a die that cuts them out, and again they have done it so that you can stamp and colour the character and then put the die on afterwards, and it will perfectly cut it out. So here's one that I've stamped out, and if you place the die over the top of it, you can actually see the entire stamped image. So you're not going to worry that you've spent all that time colouring it in and then you're not sure if the die is going to perfectly cut it out properly. You can actually see the whole image, which makes it really, really easy for lining them up. So he's got his own die, the little scientist has, the little grumpy one has, the one that's waving has got his own die, the little furry one with the cake, the little hyper one. Then you've also actually got a die that cuts out the word hi with the exclamation mark. You've got a tiny little one that cuts out the outline heart. You've got one that cuts out the eyeball, which I found really useful. You have got one that cuts out the little flower. You've got one that cuts out the stick of dynamite, one that cuts out the round bottom flask, and one that cuts out the birthday cake as well. So literally every single picture image has a die except for the little bubbles, but I did actually just cut around those bubbles because I wanted them to look the same as everything else with a white border, but you might actually just want to stamp them straight onto your card depending how you're using it as well. And then So you have all those ones that coordinate, and then the extra ones that are left over is a really lovely hello. And it's actually all joined along the bottom, so even though they look like separate letters, they're actually still all joined in one piece, which is nice. Then you have the word friend, which actually falls out of the banner, so you could do different techniques with colouring the fall away pieces and placing them back in to make the word friend in a different colour, and then the banner would be in a different colour as well. You've got this lovely one, which is really nice actually. It just debosses some little kind of stars in the background, and I've used it on a little gift tag and it works really nicely. And I even did that 3 times on the gift tag, and the previous 2 impressions didn't get too squashed as I was doing the third one, which is always good to know, because a lot of the time these kind of dies, they're not like deep enough, and then you do a second one because you want it somewhere else on the card as well, and it kind of squashes everything that you did before, which is often really annoying. So this one is a really good die. Then you also have the word hi, which I think actually would fit quite nicely in some of the circles on the background die as well. And then finally you have that gorgeous large background die, which they have made tall enough to work on an A2 or an A6 sized card. And I'll give you the actual measurements. It doesn't have an outside edge, it literally just cuts the bubbles, so you can use this on any sized panel that you want, although you do get that like debossed rectangle of the entire thing. Because of the pressure of it going through the machine and stuff, you will get a slight impression of a rectangle, but it's not too difficult to disguise if you want to, or I've just left it on one of mine and I think it looks fine, just having the 2 lines going down the sides of the dots. But this actual die, the whole metal, measures just under 6 inches and it is 3 inches wide, so it's a really nice size. I think this would also like matte and layer nicely onto a 5x7 card as well, being just under 6 inches. You know, if I show you there, that's 7 up to there, and then 5 is down here, so you could either have it with larger borders on the side or move it off to one side and then like have a slightly larger border on one side as well, or you could cut it a couple of times. I mean, because they've made this nearly 6 inches, you could actually cut this you know, once, twice and a little bit more to completely fill the front of a 5x7 card as well, or again you could cut it a couple of times to completely fill the front of an A2 or an A6 sized card as well. So this is like my favourite size of rectangle to work on for a card, and you can see you could cut it once and then move it down and cut it again, so you'd actually have you know, the whole panel could have holes all over it as well. Whether you turn that into a piece of cheese and like find some little mouse stamps that you might have, and they could be like poking out of the little cheese holes, or you could use it as bubbles, again with like cute little characters blowing bubbles. It could be a bath time themed card with the bubbles. It could be like blowing bubbles in the garden with a rainbow in there. It could just be a cool polka dot background that could go with like clowns or something. You can just use the polka dots for something else, for a different kind of project. Like you could layer them all up, you could turn that into a snowman as well. So there really are loads of different ways of using this, whether you're going to use it with these gorgeous little monsters or whether you're just going to utilise this in other cards with different stamps that you might have as well. I think this is a really, really nice die, so I'm very glad they put that one in. So those are all of the dies and stamps, and I'll be back in a second to show you all of the samples that I've done as well. Okay, so I've got 4 cards and a couple of tags to show you. So the first 2 are the ones that I've done in my sped up video, which is where I was actually masking the little monsters. So you stamp the monster and like something else if you want an accessory to go with it onto your main piece of card. And then I kept them on the back of here. I just use one of these post-it notes that have the sticky that goes like almost all the way to the edge of it, just because they stay down a little bit better when you're ink blending over the top of them. And then you just cut them out, but when you cut them out, you cut onto that black outline that's on the very outside edge of it, and that way you don't get any white line around the edge of the monster. So the ink blending will go straight up to your image. But if you don't mind the white outline around the character, or you just don't like fussy cutting but you want to try this kind of effect, you can actually take a post-it note, stick it onto just a piece of printer paper and then run it through with the coordinating die that's supposed to go with the monster, and then you can either stamp your monster and try and stick the post-it note cutout over the top of it and try and get it you know, like with a perfect edge around it, or you can just put the post-it note on there first, the little die cut, do all your inking and everything in the background, peel that off and then stamp the monster on afterwards, and then you can get it perfectly in the centre of the white bubble as well. So there are different ways of doing this kind of technique. I think he stands out perfectly against the background. This one maybe could have benefited from a white border around the edge. It's probably because I actually used orange on him as well as the background, whereas this one, the red, is far away from the background, but this one, the orange, does kind of touch the background in some areas, so he could have benefited from a white border around the edge. But it's totally up to you what kind of way you want to do this technique, whether you want to take time to cut out the masks, and then you can use these for a couple of uses. The wings did fall off this one, but you can easily piece them back together. And then literally all you do is I stamp the images first and then put the masks over the top, and then I just came in with some Distress inks, or you can use Distress Oxides. This one I used Barn Door Distress ink, and then this one I used Spiced Marmalade Distress Oxide, and you can see the slight differences you get with using inks and oxides. That could be another reason why he doesn't stand out as much, because the inks are more translucent and these are more like creamy and opaque, so that could also be another difference. Then while the masks were still on, I took this stencil, which I've now destroyed because I was ripping it to show you, and I took the same colour that I'd been ink blending with and ink blended some dots all over the background. I didn't just put it on like this and ink through it, I moved it to different areas and was quite specific with where I was picking out the spots. I wanted more of the smaller ones rather than the larger ones, and I was just sort of placing them down the card, and the same with the orange ones. And then I came back in with two little small pieces of cut and dry foam and some Nuvo Embellishment mousse, and it's really gorgeous, that red. I really like that red colour, and it looks fantastic 3D through a stencil as well. I have just used it flat on this one, but also three-dimensional through the stencil would look fantastic too, whether you're doing this kind of thing, you know, using a die cut or actually using a proper stencil as well. I think maybe if you're using it 3D, you would want to take your mask off of your monster before the mousse dried, otherwise you might have difficulty removing it if you've overlapped a dot over the top of the monster onto the mask as well. So you can see here I tried to do some so some were going behind the monster so that it looked kind of quite effective and cohesive, that the monster was like in front of this cool orby background as well. So that was how I did the two backgrounds on these, and then all I did was peel the masks off and then just colour them, and I used a bunch of the Nuvo alcohol pens to colour them in, just different colours that I thought would contrast nicely. So these are basically complementary colours from across the colour wheel. So I don't know if everybody knows about complementary colours, but I always think red and green is Christmas, so they are complementary colours to each other, and then you only have to remember orange and blue and purple and yellow are complementary. So if you did a purple monster with a yellow background, that would also stand out really nicely. But I think he looks so adorable, that gorgeous green and like turquoisey minty colour with the beautiful red background. I really love how this one turned out, and I did sending you monster hugs, because he kind of looks like he's got his arms open and he could like be running up to hug you, or you could also use hi or hello, because he could also be waving with that hand. And then this one is using that really funny sentiment that says, thanks for cheering me up, I was so grumpy, and then you've cheered him up by giving him cake and he still looks grumpy. But I thought that was a really sweet kind of card to send somebody. So those are the two that are in my sped up video. Then I have also done a photographic step-by-step for the Tonic blog as well to create this card, which is using the technique of debossing the die into the cardstock. So basically you take the sandwich of plates for your tangerine that goes green plate, squidgy green mat, then you put the white card on, then you put the die on top of that facing into the squidgy green mat, so the cutting line is towards the cardstock and gonna go into the green mat, and then you put your white top plate on the top and you run that through, and then you get this gorgeous effect of the sort of circular cutting edge like pressing into the card to leave a sort of debossed sort of effect, and I really love the look of this kind of thing. I showed it not that long ago in a kit video. There was like a swirly dye. It was that pop-up sentiment one, and I debossed the swirly dye and then put the detail back over the top. That also looks fantastic as well if you put the actual die cut over the top when you've done this technique too. But I really liked it just for the spotty kind of background. And for this one in the background, you'll see this all in the step-by-step if you go over to the Tonic blog, but I coloured the circles really messily, not very neatly, using the chisel tip of the alcohol pens that I'd used for the blues and greens on his cake. And then I came back in with Distress Oxides and inked over the top, and I used Tumbled Glass and Twisted Citron to ink over the top to give those colours. And then I just added some doodles with white gel pens and stuff in the background. And then for the little character, this is the one that I tried to give a fuzzy furry effect to. So I just took 3 different red markers. I've got my little list of colours here so I can tell you which ones I used. I used the 375 Plum Tomato as the base colour for him, and then I came in with 377 Fresh Watermelon and 381 Black Cherry. And all I was doing was just adding little tiny dashed lines all over him, and it kind of gives that sort of furry look to him. So I think he would look cute in all sorts of different colours, but I went for red because I'd kind of used all of the other colours up on the other project that I'd done. But I think he looks really cute in red, and he pops really nicely against the background because I've used reds and oranges on him, so then I've used greens and blues in the background because they're the 2 complementary colours of red and orange. And then I coloured the cake to match the background as well so that everything coordinates nicely. And then the sentiment, I did Monstrous Birthday Wishes, which I think is a really cool sentiment as well. And I love that you get birthday wishes in there because just a nice generic sentiment in a really nice fun modern sort of font that will then go with any other stamps that you have in your stash or even dies as well. So I really like that sentiment. So that is the one that will be in the photographic step-by-step blog post on Tonic's blog. Then I also did a couple of gift tags as well. So this one is that crazy little hyper one holding a flower, and then I did the hello friend sentiment. And I was going to put these little pieces back in, but I didn't mind the look without them in. The little landlock piece of the R and the D, I didn't mind it without them in, so I left it this time. But I do usually put those pieces back in, but they are quite tiny, so it'd be a little bit fiddly to put them back in. The background on this one, you can see where I've done the stars. I've cut that die into it, and this was the first impression, this was the second impression, and that was the third impression. And it has squashed it a little bit, but not as much as some other dies squashed the impression out, so I was quite impressed with that. And these two have actually got Aquaflow background. So this was taking the Wild Phlox, and this was the True Turquoise, and then some of the True Turquoise had like dripped off of this tag, so I just dipped the end of the pink one into that colour, and then it made a gorgeous purple fade on the bottom of it, hence the little purple monster on there. And I just drew some flowers in the background using the alcohol pens that I'd used to colour the little monster in as well, and then I've die cut him out. And then this one I've done the You're My Favourite Weirdo, and I've coloured this one, I gave it grey hair and I turned the candle into a paintbrush, and I've coloured him orange so that he contrasts to the blue background as well. So we've got those two little gift tags, and then the final one that I did is another just an extra card. I really wanted to use the little scientist and have round bottom flask flying everywhere in the background. There's also eyeballs as well, and the bubbles and some little hearts too. And I thought this was quite funny. And the idea that I was saying about them drinking the potion and them changing colour, I think this card kind of looks like that, because it almost looks like maybe this monster was pink and he's drunken some of that and now he's turning purple and there's still a few pink spots left on. And then this one kind of looks like he is a pink little monster, but he's drunken some of the potion because his tongue's gone purple. I don't know if that sort of relates, but I just thought it was funny to kind of think about the colours that you're colouring them to go along with. They might have drunken a potion. And then I've used the Let's Get This Party Started for the sentiment on this one. And I also debossed the die in the background here, but the differences are, this one, I debossed the die onto the white card and then added colour, but this one I did an Aquaflow background with one of the green Aquaflows, and then when it was dry, I debossed the die into it. So the colour is completely down into all the recessed areas. This one, I mean, it has gone into all the recessed areas because I was using one of the large Nuvo blending brushes, but if you did maybe like dragging an ink pad over the top of it, or coloured the whole thing with your alcohol pens and didn't press too hard, you could actually retain those white areas in that debossed part where the cutting line of the die pushes the cardstock down as well. And then I've also used some Nuvo drops on here too, which were the Sprig of Mistletoe, which is the newest gloss green from the Santa's Workshop colour trend, and then I also used Apple Green, which is one of the original kind of gloss colours as well. So I thought they worked really nicely with that green background. And I always just think green when I think of wacky kind of potions and sciencey experiments and stuff. I don't know why, I just always go for green. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this up close video and seeing all of these different samples that I had done. I was going to do an art journal page, but I ran out of time. But I mean, I might do that sometime in the future. But yeah, I really enjoyed this month's set, and I love all of the cute little characters, and there's 6 different ones, so you can use any of these ideas if you like to repurpose ideas, or, you know, try out a design that I've shown. You could use any of these with any of the different characters. I mean, this one I put the little fella on top of his head, but he could be on top of this one, and this guy could have been cheering him up for being grumpy, so that could be another fun combination. You could also do him sitting on top of this one's head, or you could do a stack of them on a DL card. I do love stacking up little critters, and I think that would look really cool as well. And maybe do them in sort of size order, so this one's at the bottom, and then maybe he's on top, and then those two on top of that or something, to create sort of a slim DL sort of design. So yeah, I think these would work really nicely for all sorts of different sizes of cards, different occasions as well. I've kept these to, like, you know, hugs, hello, birthday wishes, and like going to a party, so again it's more birthday, but definitely if you have some like Halloween sentiment stamps or something, you could definitely turn these into Halloween cards if you wanted to as well. Or you could probably turn some of these into aliens. I mean, I know they're called monsters, but I mean, that could be an alien as well. He could be an alien. This one could definitely be an alien. You could colour him in green, and then he kind of looked like a slimy alien with like this dripping effect on him. So yeah, I think they're really versatile, cute little characters that could be monsters or aliens or something more Halloween-y as well. Even though they look cute, they could definitely still be Halloween themed too. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this up close video, and stay tuned for tomorrow, because there should be the sped up video showing you these 2 cards as well. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye!